My mate left me the night before my 18th birthday for my sister. I thought that was the end of my story. I thought I would always be her shadow, but fate had other plans, because now I belong to the most powerful alpha in the realm, and my ex, the boy who broke me, is begging to have me back. Too late. This time, I'm not just a mate. I'm the Luna. The first rays of sunlight bled across the trees, spilling gold over the rooftops of Blackridge Pack, and yet I felt none of its warmth. My breath misted in the crisp air as I stood barefoot on the balcony outside my room, arms wrapped around myself, staring into the endless stretch of forest beyond the borders. The scent of pine and damp earth should have been comforting. It had always been my anchor, the smell of home. But today, it twisted in my chest like a cruel reminder. I was 17. Just 1 year away from 18, when the moon goddess's laws would finally allow me to accept the bond that had been tugging at my soul since I was 16. 1 year away from being with him. Kieran, the name alone was enough to stir the wolf inside me, restless and yearning. He was my mate, the one destiny had chosen for me. Or so I thought. I pressed a trembling hand against my heart, remembering last night. Remembering the way his eyes, storm gray, sharp as steel, had flickered with hunger when we were alone together, his hands hovering dangerously close to my skin as though he wanted me, needed me. And I had whispered the words that still burned my tongue even now. I don't want to wait. I want you now. I had been willing, desperate even, because waiting 1 more year felt unbearable. The pull of the bond was fire under my skin, and every time Kieran looked at me, my body responded with an ache that went deeper than flesh. But instead of pulling me into his arms, instead of sealing what the goddess had written in our blood, Kieran had laughed. Cruel. Sharp. Cold. You think I'd risk everything for you? You're just a girl, Ilara. Not a woman. Not ready. Not enough. The words had cut deeper than claws, and then, before I could even breathe, he had turned away, slipping out of the shadows of the clearing with a smirk I didn't recognize. A smirk that hadn't been meant for me, because Celine was waiting for him. My sister. Celine had always been everything I wasn't. Golden-haired where I was dark, sharp-tongued where I was soft-spoken. She didn't need to try. People looked at her and saw perfection. The future Luna everyone whispered about. The daughter my parents favored. And last night, when Kieran's arms slid around her waist as if she belonged there, I thought I would be sick. The bond between Kieran and me pulsed violently in my chest, screaming that this was wrong, impossible. Mates couldn't betray each other. Mates couldn't choose another. And yet there he was, his lips brushing her ear as she laughed, triumphant. I had run before they saw me. I hadn't wanted to hear more, but fate wasn't merciful. This morning, as I descended the stairs into the main hall, their voices rang out, echoing across the stone walls. My father's booming laughter, my mother's soft clapping, and Kieran's low, rich voice, confident, unashamed. Celine is everything I want. She doesn't hesitate. She doesn't cling to childish rules. She's bold. A real Luna. I froze at the bottom step, my blood running ice cold. My eyes found them at the center of the hall, Celine in her silk nightrobe, her head resting against Kieran's chest, while my parents looked on with glowing approval. For a heartbeat, no one noticed me. I stood there invisible, unwanted, the truth slamming into me like a blade. Kieran had not just rejected me. He had chosen her. Celine lifted her gaze then, meeting my eyes. And she smiled. Not kindly, not apologetically, but wickedly, as though she had been waiting for this moment all along. Well, she said, her voice dripping like honey, looks like the moon goddess made a mistake after all. The laughter that followed broke something inside me that I don't remember how I made it outside, only that the next thing I knew, I was running, barefoot across the dirt, the morning sun stinging my eyes. My wolf howled within me, clawing at my insides, but I shoved her down. I couldn't shift, not like this, not when my body shook with betrayal. The forest swallowed me whole, branches whipping at my arms, my hair tangling in the wind. I ran until my lungs burned, until the taste of blood filled my mouth. When I finally collapsed beside the river that cut through the borderlands, My body trembled too violently to rise. Tears streaked my face, hot and furious. How dare he? How dare she? We were mates. The bond between us wasn't something that could be ignored. Not unless he had chosen to break it. A chill slithered through me. No wolf in their right mind would sever the bond before it was fully formed. It was agony.
Torture.
Madness. And yet, Kieran had smiled when he looked at Celine. Smiled like it was worth it. The wind shifted then, carrying with it a scent that did not belong to my pack.
Muskier.
Wilder. My head snapped up, my wolf instantly on edge. Footsteps. Heavy. Controlled. Surrounding me. Shadows emerged between the trees. Wolves with eyes like molten silver and fur darker than night. I scrambled back, heart hammering, realizing too late that I had crossed too far. The river wasn't just a boundary. It was a line no wolf was supposed to cross. Beyond it lay Nightbane territory, the land of our rival pack. The largest wolf shifted before my eyes, his body rippling as fur gave way to flesh. A man stood where the beast had been, tall and broad-shouldered, with eyes that burned like fire against his dark hair. His presence pressed against me like a storm, and when his gaze locked onto mine, the bond inside me snapped taut, harder, fiercer, more undeniable than it had ever been with Kieran, mate. The word thundered through my soul, leaving me breathless. He tilted his head, studying me like a hunter might study prey. But there was no cruelty in his stare, only certainty. "You don't belong here," he said, his voice deep, resonant, carrying authority that made the wolves behind him bow their heads. Then his lips curved, slow and sure. "You belong to me." The world beyond the border should have felt hostile, dangerous, forbidden. Instead, as Dorian led me through the dense woods into Nightbane territory, I was struck by how alive everything seemed here. Sunlight dappled through leaves greener than I'd ever seen on my side of the river. The air smelled richer too, clean and vibrant, tinged with a faint aroma of wild herbs that clung to the soil. But no amount of beauty could settle the storm inside me. Every step I took away from Blackridge, away from my family, from Celine, from Kieran, tore at me until my chest ached like an open wound. I had crossed a line I could never uncross, and still, that tether burned between me and the man walking beside me. Dorian, his presence was overwhelming. His wolf, even leashed beneath his skin, pressed against mine like a silent demand. But it wasn't cruel. It wasn't forceful. It was steady.
Certain.
As if he knew something I didn't, I wrapped my arms around myself tighter, trying to focus on my breathing. Trying to ignore how the bond pulled at me, dragging me toward him when I needed to stay away, because I couldn't trust it. Not again. The Nightbane wolves who had flanked us during the border encounter moved silently ahead now, watchful but respectful of the distance between their alpha and me. They didn't stare, didn't sneer. My own pack would have whispered, judged, mocked. Here I was just watched. Like they were waiting for me to reveal what I was, that I hated it. By the time the trees opened into a valley, my throat was raw from holding back tears. And then I saw it. Dorian's stronghold. A fortress carved of pale stone rose from the valley floor, sunlight gleaming off its towers. But unlike the cold, gray walls of Blackridge, this place pulsed with life. Wolves in human and shifted forms moved freely through the wide courtyards, sparring, laughing, carrying baskets of herbs and food. Children's laughter carried on the wind. It wasn't oppressive. It wasn't suffocating. It felt like home, and that realization cut me deeper than any rejection ever had. Dorian glanced down at me as we approached the gates. His expression was unreadable, his jaw sharp as if carved from stone. But his eyes, God's, those eyes, burned like fire under the morning sun. "You're safe here," he said simply. Safe. The word caught in my chest, foreign and fragile. Kieran had never promised me safety. My parents never offered it either.
For Celine, yes.
Always Celine. But me? I had been an afterthought, a shadow. Safe, I wanted to believe him. But the bond had lied before. Inside the fortress, every corner sang of strength. Wolves bowed their heads respectfully when Dorian passed, but not out of fear. out of loyalty. I could feel it. Their reverence wasn't forced. It was earned. The contrast to my pack was unbearable. Blackridge had always ruled by comparison and cruelty. Celine shining, me dimming. Kieran praised, me silenced. Here, the light didn't seem to dim anyone till a lump formed in my throat. I didn't belong here. You don't have to look so terrified. Dorian's voice rumbled softly beside me, and I flinched, realizing how tightly I was hugging myself. His lips curved, not quite a smile, more like an observation. No one here will harm you. I wanted to laugh, or scream, or both. Instead, I said hoarsely, my own mate harmed me. The words slipped out before I could stop them, hanging heavy in the air between us. Dorian's gaze sharpened. For a heartbeat, I thought he'd ask, thought he'd demand answers. But instead, he inclined his head slightly, as if tucking the words away for later. I'm not him, he said finally. My heart clenched at the certainty in his tone. I didn't know if I believed him. They gave me a room in one of the fortress towers. Bright, spacious, with sunlight spilling across a bed piled high with furs. A carved wooden chest stood in the corner, already stocked with clothes in my size. That detail undid me. Someone had prepared this room. For me, but how could that be? They hadn't known I was coming. Unless Dorian had known. Unless fate had whispered in his ear long before I stumbled across his border. I closed the door behind me and collapsed onto the bed, pressing my face into the furs that I didn't cry. Not yet. But the ache inside me pulsed like a bruise, spreading wider, deeper. Wolf stirred restlessly. She liked it here. She liked him. I could feel her pull toward Dorian, sharp and eager, her instincts unbothered by my broken heart. He's ours, she whispered in the back of my mind. No. I whispered aloud, my voice breaking. He can't be. Not after. The knock at the door silenced me. Elara. Dorian's voice came, deep and unyielding.
Eat. Rest.
You're not my prisoner. But you're not leaving either. Not until you understand what you are to me. His footsteps retreated, leaving silence in their wake. I sat there trembling, torn between fury, fear, and something dangerously close to hope, because deep down, a truth I didn't want clawed at me. The bond didn't feel broken, not like it had with Kieran. And oh, this bond felt stronger, fiercer, unshakable. And if that was true, then maybe fate wasn't cruel after all, but I wasn't ready to believe it, not yet. The fortress looked different as the sun bled across the horizon, painting the pale stone walls in crimson and gold. From the window of my tower room, I watched the last sliver of light dip beneath the trees, my heart caught between two worlds. Blackridge. The pack that raised me. The pack that rejected me, and Nightbane. The pack that should have been my enemy, yet pulsed with more warmth in one day than I had ever felt in 17 years. I had spent the afternoon wandering the courtyards in silence, wolves nodding politely as I passed.
No snares. No whispers.
Just quiet acknowledgement. It was unnerving. I wasn't used to being anything but the shadow trailing behind Celine's golden light. Wolf stirred within me, restless, prowling against my ribs. She didn't understand my hesitation. She liked it here. She liked him that I turned away from the window before her voice could grow louder, and that was when the howls shattered the air low. Sharp, commanding, Nightbane wolves surged across the courtyard below, answering the call, their bodies tense as they shifted into their wolf forms. My breath caught as I leaned against the window frame, scanning the darkening tree line. Something was coming, and oh, someone. The doors of the fortress opened with a bang, and Dorian strode out, power rolling off him in waves. Even at a distance, I could feel it. The dominance, the raw authority that made every wolf bow their head instinctively. Pulse stuttered, and then I saw them, crossing the river like they owned it, cloaked in smug certainty. Celine, her golden hair glowed like a halo in the dying light, her lips curled in a smile that promised venom. Kieran walked beside her, tall and strong, his hand resting possessively at her waist. My stomach twisted at the sight. Celine's gaze swept the courtyard, sharp as a blade, until it landed on the tower, on me. She tilted her head, and her smile widened. "Ilara," she called, her voice carrying unnaturally loud across the valley. "Little sister, come home." The words slashed at me. Home? That wasn't home anymore. Dorian stepped forward, his broad shoulders cutting a stark silhouette against the firelit sky. His voice carried easily, deep and resonant. "She is under my protection." Celine's laughter rang out, cruel and bright. "Your protection? Don't be ridiculous. She's Blackridge-born. My blood. My pack. She doesn't belong here. She belongs where she chooses." Dorian's tone didn't rise, but the power threaded through it was undeniable. The wolves around him bristled in unison, their loyalty a physical shield. Celine's expression flickered for the briefest moment, but she recovered quickly, tugging Kieran closer. "She doesn't choose. She follows. Always has. Isn't that right, Ilara?" Her eyes locked on mine, daring me to deny her. My throat closed, because once she would have been right. I had always followed, always dimmed myself to make her shine brighter. But Dorian's head turned then, his gaze finding me at the tower window. His eyes burned like fire and storm, commanding yet steady, waiting. "Choose." The word thrummed through the bond between us, silent but undeniable, and for the first time in my life, I felt the truth. My choice mattered. I pushed open the window wider, the night air rushing against my skin. My hands trembled as I gripped the stone ledge. "I'm not going back," I said, my voice breaking but carrying. Celine's face darkened. "You don't know what you're saying." Kieran's gaze snapped to me, hard and unreadable. For a moment, I thought I saw regret flicker there, but it was gone too quickly, replaced by arrogance. "You're confused," he said. "You're mine, Ilara. You've always been mine." The words made bile rise in my throat. "No," I whispered, loud enough for the bond to carry it to him. "Not anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the wolves seemed to pause, their growls stilled. The night holding its breath, Celine's lips curled into a snarl. "You'll regret this." Dorian's voice cut through the air like a blade. "She already regrets you." Gasps rippled through the courtyard. The dominance in his tone left no room for doubt. Ilara of Blackridge was no longer theirs. She was his. My heart thundered as Celine dragged Kieran back across the river, their faces masks of fury and humiliation. And though fear still gnawed at me, though doubt still whispered in my chest, a strange, quiet strength settled in my bones. For the first time, I hadn't been the shadowed I had chosen. The fortress was quiet, the halls bathed in silver moonlight. My footsteps echoed softly against the stone floor as I wandered, unable to sleep, and going back. The words echoed through my mind like a haunting refrain. I had spoken them aloud earlier, but it was only now, in the stillness of midnight, that the weight of what I had done settled over me. I had chosen. Not Celine, not Kieran, not Blackridge. For the first time in my life, I had chosen myself, but the cost of that choice pressed against my chest like a heavy stone. Blackridge had been cruel, yes, but it was still the pack of my childhood, the home I'd known, the forest where I'd run as a pup, the walls where I'd whispered dreams to the moon. My parents were still there, though I doubted they cared. And Celine, my sister. I pressed my palms to my eyes, forcing back the sting of tears. No matter how much I hated her, no matter how much venom she spat, she was still my blood. I had never imagined a life without her shadow pressing against me. Now, I was walking into a future where she stood on the other side of a battlefield, and going back. I didn't realize I had drifted toward the training yards until I heard the faint clang of steel. My wolf perked inside me, curious. The yard was lit by torches, their flames flickering against the pale stone walls. And there, at the center, was Dorian. He moved like liquid shadow, his sword flashing beneath the moon. Every motion was deliberate, precise, the embodiment of strength and control. Sweat gleamed across his bare shoulders, his chest rising and falling with steady breaths. I should have looked away. Should have left before he noticed me. But my eyes betrayed me. They lingered on the scars that marred his arms and chest, the silent proof of battles fought and won. Scars Kieran didn't have. Scars Celine would never bear. Scars that told me Dorian had bled for his people. He stilled suddenly, lowering his blade, his gaze finding me at the edge of the torchlight. His eyes burned like embers, sharp but not unkind. You couldn't sleep. It wasn't a question that I shook my head, my throat tight. He studied me for a moment, then set the sword aside. Slowly, he walked toward me, every step deliberate. The bond between us thrummed, pulling at me, demanding I move closer. I stayed rooted to the spot, even as my pulse quickened. No going back, I whispered before I could stop myself, his head tilted slightly. Do you regret it? My lips parted, but no sound came. Did I regret it? The pain of leaving was sharp. Yes. But the thought of Celine's mocking smile, of Kieran's hand on her waist, of my parents' approval of their betrayal, it was unbearable. I swallowed hard. No, the faintest curve touched his lips. Not quite a smile, but something close. Good, he said simply. Because regret chains you to the past. And you deserve to be free. For a moment, silence stretched between us, heavy but not uncomfortable. My wolf purred quietly, soothed by his words, by his certainty, but my human heart resisted. You speak like you know me, I whispered, almost accusing. But you don't. His gaze didn't waver. I don't have to know your past to see your worth. Heat rushed to my cheeks, unexpected and unwanted. I turned away quickly, hugging myself. Kieran didn't see it. The name slipped out, raw and bitter. Dorian's voice lowered, rougher now. Then he was a fool. The bond pulsed between us, sharp and insistent. My wolf howled for me to step closer, to close the distance, to accept, but my heart still ached. My trust was still fractured. I shook my head and whispered, I don't know how to be free. Dorian's steps drew nearer, his presence a storm at my back. He didn't touch me, he didn't need to. His voice wrapped around me like a vow. Then I'll teach you. I didn't look at him as I left the training yard, my chest tight, my mind spinning, but I felt him watching me. Not with hunger, not with possession, with certainty. And as I climbed the tower stairs, my wolf stirred once more, whispering the truth I wasn't ready to face. And oh, going back, only forward. The courtyard smelled of dew and steel. Sunlight spilled across the training grounds, glinting off polished weapons and scattering across the pale stone walls like shards of light. Wolves were already awake, their laughter carrying as they sparred in pairs, their voices laced with an easy camaraderie that stung me with its unfamiliarity. Back home, training had never been laughter. Training had been whispers. Judgment. My failures compared to Celine's effortless grace. Here, no one looked at me with mockery. No one muttered about how weak I was. But maybe they didn't need to. Maybe I already knew it. Dorian's shadow fell across me, steady and certain. You don't need to prove yourself to them, he said. His voice was even, but his presence commanded silence. A few wolves paused to bow their heads as he passed. You only need to prove yourself to yourself. I swallowed hard, my palms slick against the wooden staff he had placed in my hands earlier. It felt heavy, unfamiliar. I'm not a fighter, I said quietly, though my wolf bristled at the words, as though offended. Dorian's gaze burned into me, sharp and unyielding. You're a wolf. You were born to fight. The bond thrummed between us, insistent. My wolf held her agreement, pacing restlessly in the back of my mind. I shook my head. Celine was the fighter. She was the one they trained, the one they said, enough. His voice cut through mine, not cruel but commanding. My chest tightened as he stepped closer, lowering his tone so only I could hear. Stop speaking her name as if it defines you. You are not her shadow, Ilara. Not here. My breath caught. The staff trembled in my hands. Dorian reached out, his fingers brushing against mine. Not to take the weapon, but to steady it. Steady me. Heat rushed through my skin where his touch lingered, the bond pulling tight like a tether. Again, he ordered. The morning passed in a blur of movement. My body protested every strike, every fall, every time the staff slipped clumsily from my grip and clattered against the stone. Sweat dripped down my temples, stinging my eyes, but Dorian was relentless. Not cruel, never cruel, but relentless. Your enemy won't wait for you to feel ready, he growled as he corrected my stance for the 10th time. Your wolf won't either. Stop hesitating. Trust her. Trust her. The words echoed in my mind as my wolf snarled, furious at my doubt. She surged forward, lending me her strength, her instincts. And for the first time, when Dorian swung at me, my body moved before my mind could falter. Wood clashed against wood with a crack that echoed across the courtyard. A hush fell. My chest heaved, my staff steady against his as I held my ground. And then, slowly, the corner of Dorian's mouth curved. Approval. Better, he said softly. Pride sparked in my chest, faint but real. For once, I hadn't failed. For once, Celine's shadow hadn't smothered me. By midday, my arms ached, my legs shook, and every breath felt like fire. But beneath the exhaustion, a strange exhilaration pulsed. I was stronger than I thought. As we paused, Dorian offered me a water flask. His fingers brushed mine again as I took it, lingering just a moment too long. The bond flared between us, hot and insistent. My lips parted, my breath catching. He didn't move closer. Didn't push, but his eyes told me he could wait. That night, as I collapsed into bed, my body sore and my spirit trembling, I stared out the window at the full moon. Celine's voice haunted me still, whispering that I would always be weak, always be the lesser sister. But beneath it, I heard something stronger, the sound of my wolf's steady growl, the echo of wood striking wood. The certainty in Dorian's voice when he said I wasn't her shadow. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was something more. The fortress was alive with sound, the rhythmic clash of training, the laughter of wolves gathering for the evening meal, the low hum of a pack that pulsed with unity. From my tower window, I watched it all, my chest tight. I should have felt comfort here. Instead, I felt cornered, because the bond was growing stronger. Every day, every training session with Dorian, every look he gave me, it pulled tighter, weaving around me like vines I couldn't escape. My wolf reveled in it, pressed against it, demanded I give in. She wanted him with an instinct that burned through my blood. But my heart remembered Kieran. The way he had looked at me with hunger, the way I had believed it meant something, only to watch him turn to Celine with the same hunger, the same touch. I pressed my hands to my temples, breathing hard. Not again. I won't fall again. The knock came just as the sun dipped below the horizon. Alara. His voice carried through the wood, deep, steady, impossible to ignore. I hesitated, every nerve alive, before finally opening the door. Dorian stood there, still dressed in his training leathers, the faint scent of smoke and pine clinging to him. His eyes found mine immediately, burning like embers in the torchlight. You missed the meal, he said simply. I wasn't hungry.
A lie.
My stomach growled in betrayal, but I kept my chin high, his brow furrowed slightly, but he didn't call me out. Instead, he said, walk with me. I wanted to refuse, wanted to close the door and drown in the safety of solitude. But the bond tugged insistently, and my wolf snarled at the very thought of denying him. I followed. He led me through the fortress, out into the moonlit gardens beyond the training yards. They were quieter here, the scent of night-blooming flowers perfuming the air. Fireflies drifted lazily above the grass, their glow soft against the dark. For a long while, neither of us spoke. Dorian walked beside me with the ease of a man who never needed to fill silence to own it. His presence was enough, but it was too much for me. Why do you keep doing this? The words slipped out sharper than I intended. Why do you keep looking at me like I'm not broken? He stopped walking, turned to face me fully. His gaze pinned me in place. Because you're not broken. My chest ached, my throat closing tight. You don't know that. You don't know me. He stepped closer, the bond sparking between us like fire. My breath caught as he raised a hand, but he didn't touch me. His palm hovered near my cheek, a silent question. I know enough, he said, voice low. I know you've been hurt, lied to,
betrayed.
but none of that defines you unless you let it. Tears stung my eyes, unbidden. And what if I let you in? What if I believe you and you leave? What if I'm not enough again? The pain in my voice cracked something open inside me, raw and ugly. Dorian's jaw tightened, his own eyes darkening with something fierce. I am not him. The bond thrummed violently between us, so strong I almost doubled over from the force of it. My wolf howled with joy, pressing me forward, demanding I bridge the gap, demanding I choose him. I leaned in, trembling, my lips just a breath from his. His scent wrapped around me, pine and smoke and something deeper, something uniquely him. And then, panic slammed through me like ice water. Kieran's smirk, Celine's laughter. The memory of their betrayal carved itself into my chest, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. No! I shoved Dorian back, hard enough to surprise even myself. My hands trembled violently, my breaths ragged, his eyes widened, not with anger, but with something worse, hurt. Elara, I can't. My voice broke, too loud, too raw. Wolves in the distance turned to look, their curiosity sharp in the night air. Shame burned my skin as I spun, running back toward the fortress before he could stop me, before he could see the tears breaking free down my cheeks. Back in my room, I collapsed against the door, sliding down until I hit the floor. My chest heaved, my heart in chaos. The bond still pulsed, demanding I go to him. My wolf screamed at me, furious at my rejection, but I pressed my hands to my ears, curling into myself. I couldn't, not yet, because the truth terrified me more than anything else that I was falling for him, and if he ever turned away, if he ever chose someone else the way Kieran had, it would destroy me completely. The fortress walls loomed behind me as I ran, the echo of my own panicked heartbeat drowning out reason. The night air was cold against my face, my bare feet stinging on the rocky soil. I didn't stop to think. Couldn't. Dorian's voice still echoed in my head, steady, certain, terrifying in its truth. I am not him. And worse, the pull of the bond, the heat that had nearly dragged me into his arms. My wolf was furious with me for resisting, pacing inside me with snarls of frustration. But my human heart, it wanted distance, because if I stayed, I would fall, and if I fell, he could break me. The forest swallowed me whole, shadows stretching long beneath the silver moonlight. Branches clawed at my arms, tangling in my hair. My chest burned, but I didn't stop until the fortress was just a memory behind the trees. Only then did I collapse against a fallen log, my breaths ragged. I pressed my hands to my face. What am I doing? The answer came not from me, but from the shift in the wind, a smell. Acrid. Metallic. Wronged. My wolf's snarl ripped through my mind. Danger. The first rogue lunged from the shadows, its matted fur bristling, eyes wild with hunger. I stumbled back, heart lurching, just as another appeared on my left, then another behind. Point 3. No, for they circled me, their snarls low and guttural. Rogues weren't like pack wolves. There was no sanity in their gaze, no purpose but blood. My staff. My training. Dorian's voice. I had none of it here. Only trembling hands and a wolf inside me screaming to fight. Shift, she urged. Let me out. But fear choked me. What if I failed? What if my wolf wasn't strong enough? The first rogue lunged, I screamed, diving aside just as its teeth snapped where my arm had been. Pain flared as another raked claws across my thigh. I stumbled, warm blood seeping through the torn fabric. The circle closed tighter. No, I gasped, tears blurring my vision. Not like this. And then, the air split with a roar. Dorian, he crashed into the clearing in his wolf form, a massive shadow of muscle and fury. His black fur gleamed under the moonlight, his eyes blazing with fire. The rogues turned, but too late. He was already among them, a storm of claws and teeth. One fell with a snapped neck, another pinned beneath his crushing jaws. The bond surged inside me, pulling tight, urging me toward him, even as blood splattered across the grass. But there were too many. One rogue slipped past, lunging for me. Its teeth sank into my arm before I could dodge, the pain white-hot. I screamed, thrashing, panic seizing me. And then, something inside me shattered. My wolf tore free. The shift ripped through my body, bones snapping, fur bursting across my skin. My howl split the night as the world sharpened, scents, sounds, the taste of blood on the air. I was on all fours, my vision blazing silver. The rogue still had my arm, but now I had teeth. I twisted, sinking them into its throat with a ferocity that shocked even me. Hot copper flooded my mouth as it gurgled and fell still. Adrenaline surged. My wolf reveled in it. I turned to see Dorian finishing the last rogue, his fur dripping with blood. He stood panting, a massive shadow under the moon. His gaze snapped to mine, and the bond thrummed so violently I thought the earth itself shook beneath us. Mate. The word thundered through me. Undeniable. We shifted back almost in unison, collapsing into the clearing, both of us bloodied and shaking. My limbs trembled, the remnants of the shift leaving me raw. Dorian reached me first, his hand closing around my face, tilting it toward him. His eyes were fire, his jaw clenched with fury. You could have been killed. His voice was ragged, harsh with something deeper than anger. You ran from me, straight into this. Tears blurred my vision, my breath breaking. I didn't know what else to do. He stared at me for a long, heavy moment, then pulled me against him. His arms wrapped around me, iron strong, trembling slightly as if he couldn't quite let go. You're not leaving me again, he said fiercely against my hair. Not like this. Not ever. And for once, I didn't fight it, I let him hold me, because for the first time, I wasn't sure if I had saved myself or if he had saved me. Maybe both. The scent of herbs lingered in the healer's wing, sharp mint, crushed lavender, and the copper tang of blood still drying on my skin. I sat on the edge of the cot, my thigh and arm wrapped in fresh bandages, the memory of claws and teeth still raw beneath the linen. The events of the night haunted me. The fear, the blood, the sound of my own bones snapping as my wolf forced her way through at last, and Dorian, fur like shadow, eyes like fire, fighting as if the world itself depended on it, fighting for me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, the way he had looked at me after, not just with anger, but with something deeper, something that seared straight through every defense I'd tried to build. You're not leaving me again. I pressed a trembling hand against my chest, where the bond pulsed steady and insistent. My wolf hummed beneath my skin, no longer content with silence. She knew what she wanted. The truth was simple. Terrified, I was falling for him. When I finally left the healer's wing, the sun had risen high, gilding the fortress in warm gold. Wolves greeted me with nods, murmuring words of respect I wasn't used to. Brave, some whispered. Strong, strong. The word felt foreign, but it settled in my bones all the same. I found Dorian waiting in the courtyard, dressed simply, his arms folded across his broad chest. The moment his eyes found me, the rest of the world dimmed. You're walking, he said, voice low, threaded with relief. I'm not made of glass, I muttered, though my cheeks burned. His lips curved faintly, but his gaze lingered on the bandage around my thigh. He stepped closer, tilting his head slightly, his tone softening. You scared me, Alara. The words caught me off guard, sharper than any reprimand. You weren't supposed to come after me, I whispered, guilt twisting in my chest. He arched a brow. You expected me to stay behind while you bled out in the woods? I looked away, heat rising in my throat. I didn't want to be a burden. A silence fell, heavy and taut. Then his hand lifted, hesitant at first, but sure as it brushed a strand of hair from my face. The touch was gentle, almost reverent. You're not a burden, he said, every word deliberate, unshakable. You are my mate. The bond surged like wildfire, my wolf howling with fierce delight. My knees nearly buckled beneath the force of it that I should have pulled away, should have denied it, but instead, for the first time, I let myself lean into his touch. The days that followed blurred into quiet recovery. Training paused, though Dorian stayed near, sometimes hovering, sometimes sitting in silence as I rested in the garden or watched the pack at work. He didn't push,
Didn't demand.
just existed beside me, a steady presence that felt less like pressure and more like safety, and slowly, impossibly, the fear inside me began to unravel. One evening, I found myself watching him as he spoke with his beta, the setting sun painting his profile in gold. His voice was calm but commanding, his every movement radiating strength. Wolves listened when he spoke, not out of fear, but trust, and it struck me then, so clear it stole my breath. This wasn't Kieran. Dorian didn't crave power for its own sake. He didn't use me as a stepping stone, didn't measure my worth against someone else's. He saw me, and for the first time, I wanted to believe that might be enough. That night, lying beneath the moonlight, I whispered the words into the silence, words too fragile to speak aloud to anyone else. I think I love him. The bond pulsed in answer, warm and certain, and though my heart still trembled, for the first time in so long, it wasn't with fear, it was with hope. The fortress felt different now. Louder, sharper, as if every creak of stone, every howl beyond the border, carried more weight than before. It had been 3 nights since the ambush in the forest. 3 nights since blood had soaked the ground, mine mingling with Dorian's as we fought side by side. The scars were still fresh, both on my skin and in the pack. Whispers followed me wherever I walked. Not all cruel, but not all kind either. Some wolves bowed their heads in respect, calling me brave or the alpha's true mate. Others spoke with doubt, their voices dropping just low enough that they thought I wouldn't hear. She's not one of us. She'll bring the rogues to our gates. She's a distraction. I told myself their words didn't matter. But when I lay awake at night, their voices tangled with my own doubts. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was a distraction. The rogues had not stopped. If anything, they had multiplied, bold, coordinated, slipping past sentries with uncanny precision. They left bodies at the borders, sometimes torn apart, sometimes untouched but broken in ways that made no sense. Dorian had doubled the patrols, his jaw set in iron lines. But tension bled through the ranks, wolves snapping at one another, suspicion brewing like storm clouds, and through it all, I felt the weight of eyes on me. As if somehow I was the crack through which darkness had slipped. One evening, I joined Dorian in the war room, where maps of the surrounding territories sprawled across the table. Red markers dotted the borders. Too many. His beta, Kale, leaned over the map, his voice taut. They're moving like a pack, Alpha. That isn't normal for rogues. Someone is leading them. Dorian's eyes flicked to mine then, a shadow of a thought he didn't speak aloud. But I knew. Kieran, Celine. The thought made my stomach twist. Kale's gaze shifted to me, his expression unreadable. And they always strike when our forces are stretched thin. It's almost as if he paused, choosing his words carefully, as if they know exactly where we're weakest. The implication hung in the air. Dorian's jaw tightened. Are you accusing Alara? Kale's eyes didn't waver. I'm saying someone is feeding them information. And she's the newest piece on the board. The room went silent. My breath caught in my throat, shame and fury colliding. I would never, I whispered, my voice hoarse. Dorian slammed his hand down on the table, the sound cracking through the tension. She is mine. That alone should be enough to silence your doubts. But when Kale bowed his head, muttering an apology, I saw the flicker in his eyes. He didn't believe me. Not fully. And worse, I wasn't sure others did either. Later, as night deepened, I stood alone on the balcony, staring at the moon. The fortress was restless beneath me, wolves pacing, guards shifting nervously at their posts. The air was thick with unease, like the moment before a storm breaks. Dorian joined me quietly, his presence a steadying weight. You heard them, I said softly, my hands gripping the stone railing. They think I'm a traitor. They're afraid, he replied. Fear breeds suspicion. But I will not let them touch you. My throat tightened. And what if they're right? What if I'm the reason this is happening? His hand closed around mine, firm, unyielding.
Alara.
Look at me. I turned, meeting the fire in his gaze. You are not the enemy. You are the reason we'll survive this. The words struck deep, setting something alight in my chest. My wolf stirred, pressing against me, whispering that he was right, that I wasn't Celine's shadow anymore. But even as hope flickered, unease gnawed at me. Because somewhere beyond these walls, Celine and Kieran were moving pieces across the board, and soon they would come for me directly. The howl tore through the fortress like a blade.
Low. Urgent.
The sound of alarm that I bolted upright from my bed, heart hammering. The night was still, but wrong, thick with a silence that pressed against my chest. My wolf snapped awake inside me, hackles raised. Danger. I barely had time to throw on a cloak before the door burst open. Kale stood there, his chest heaving, eyes wild. They're here, at the gates. The words froze the blood in my veins. I followed him out, the stone corridors alive with movement. Wolves rushed past, some half-shifted already, weapons gleaming in torchlight. The air buzzed with fear and adrenaline. The courtyard. Dorian stood at the front, his presence towering above the chaos. His wolf glimmered beneath his skin, his eyes glowing faintly in the dark. His voice cut through the noise like steel. Hold the line. Do not let them breach. The gates shuddered with the force of claws and teeth from the other side. Growls seeped through, wild and frenzied. Then, with a final crack, the wood splintered, and the rogues poured in. The battle was chaos. Fur and steel and blood tangled together as wolves collided. Rogues moved in unnatural precision, not the mindless beasts I remembered, but soldiers with purpose. Someone was guiding them. Kieran, M.Y. Wolf surged forward, claws itching to tear, to fight. For once, I didn't push her back. I shifted mid-stride, bones snapping, fur bursting across my skin. The ground burned beneath my paws as I launched myself at the first rogue. My teeth sank into its throat, the copper taste flooding my mouth. It fell, and another took its place, around me. Nightbane wolves stole glances, some surprised, some wary. But none could deny I was fighting. Not Celine. Meet at the tide was brutal. For every rogue that fell, two more seemed to take its place. My muscles screamed. My thigh throbbed where the old wound reopened, but still I fought, teeth and claws ripping, my wolf howling with fury. Then I heard it, her voice. Elara? I froze mid-swipe, the sound cutting deeper than any claw. Celine stood beyond the chaos, untouched, her hair gleaming silver in the moonlight. Beside her, Kieran loomed, his gaze sharp and cruel. They didn't fight. They watched, and Celine smiled, sweet, poisonous. You don't belong here, she called, her voice carrying over the clash. They'll never trust you. Never love you. You'll always be my shadow. The words sliced through me, dredging up every wound I'd tried to heal that I faltered. A rogue slammed into me, knocking me hard into the dirt. Claws raked across my ribs, hot blood spilling. My wolf shrieked in pain, and then Dorian was there. He ripped the rogue off me with a snarl, his massive wolf form crushing it in one brutal snap. His eyes met mine, blazing with fury and something fiercer still. Get up, his voice growled through the bond. You are not her shadow. Something inside me cracked wide open and I rose, bloodied, shaking, but steady. My wolf surged, lending me her strength. Together, we launched at the next rogue, claws striking true, fangs tearing flesh. Celine's smile faltered, Kieran's gaze narrowed, and for the first time, I felt it, power, raw and alive, coursing through me not because of Celine, not because of comparison or spite, but because I chose it, because I was more. The battle raged until dawn's first light crested the horizon. At last, the rogues fled, melting into the forest shadows. The gates were broken, the courtyard slick with blood, but Nightbane still stood and I stood, breathing hard, for matted with sweat and gore. I turned toward the treeline. Celine and Kieran were gone, but their voices lingered. They'll come again, stronger. And next time, they won't leave without me. The fortress was quiet. Too quiet. Every wolf felt it in their bones, the stillness before a storm. Patrols had doubled, wards carved into the gates, healers ready with herbs and bandages. But it wasn't enough. I knew it. Dorian knew it. Tonight, they were coming. I stood on the balcony, the moon painting silver across my skin. My wolf pressed at the edges of my mind, restless, whispering that this was it. No more running. No more shadows. Tonight, everything ended. The attack came just after midnight. A chorus of howls shattered the stillness, followed by the crash of wood and iron. Rogues swarmed like a tide, more than I had ever seen, eyes glowing with madness. Dorian shifted instantly, his massive wolf barreling into the front lines, his roar shaking the earth itself. Kale and the Nightbane warriors followed, steel and foam clashing with the tide. I dove into the fray, shifting mid-run, for erupting across my body. My wolf leapt into the chaos, blood and fury fueling each strike. But then, her scent cut through the battlefield.
Familiar. Sweet.
Poison. Celine, she appeared through the smoke, untouched by the battle around her. Her hair gleamed silver, her eyes glinting like cold stars, and she smiled. My darling sister, she purred, her voice slicing through the chaos. Still trying to play Alpha's pet? My wolf snarled, lips curling back. You don't get to call me sister. I growled, shifting back into human form, claws still half-formed. Blood dripped from my arms, but I stood steady. Not after what you took from me. Celine's laugh was soft, pitying. Took? Alara, please. Kieran was mine long before you ever thought you deserved him. You were just practice. Her words twisted like knives, but they didn't pierce the way they once would have. Not anymore, because behind me, I could feel the bond, Dorian's presence, steady, fierce, unbreakable. I don't need him, I said, my voice steady, strong. And I don't need you. She lunged, claws flashing, that I met her head-on. The fight was nothing like training. Celine was fast, vicious, her wolf's power sharp and cruel. But mine was steady, grounded, fueled not by envy or spite, but by the need to protect. To live, we clashed again, and again, blood splattering, teeth snapping. Every strike was years of pain, every wound a memory of being her shadow. But with each blow, I realized the truth. I wasn't her shadow anymore. I was more. Across the battlefield, I saw Dorian locked with Kieran. The clash was brutal, Kieran's wolf nearly matching him in size, their roars echoing. Sparks flew as teeth met flesh, blood spilling freely. But even in the chaos, Dorian's eyes flicked to mine once. Just once. And the bond surged, steadying me. Together, it whispered. I drove forward with a howl, my claws tearing across Celine's chest. She stumbled, shock flashing in her silver eyes. This isn't you, she hissed. You don't have the strength. I bared my teeth, standing tall over her fallen form.
No.
This is me. And with one final strike, I ended it. When the dust settled, dawn painted the battlefield in pale gold. Rogues lay scattered, broken. Kieran's wolf was gone, his body vanished into the forest's shadows, defeated, but not destroyed, and Celine lay still, her eyes wide and empty, the silver sheen fading from them at last. I stood over her, bloodied, trembling, but unbroken. Dorian approached, shifting back, his body torn but his presence unshaken. He reached me, his hand finding mine. His thumb brushed against my blood-stained knuckles. You did it, he murmured. Tears blurred my vision, though I stood taller than I ever had.
No, y whispered.
We did. That night, as the pack held victory to the moon, I stood beside Dorian. Not as Celine's shadow, not as the girl abandoned by Kieran, but as the Luna of Nightbane. And for the first time, I believed I was exactly where I belonged.